Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe so I can tell more interesting stories. Now, let's get started. You land in Kathmandu with more confidence than clean socks. Your duffel bags wobble off the luggage carousel, and you feel like an extra in an adventure movie that hasn't been properly funded yet. The airport smells like old curry, exhaust fumes, and potential. The first thing you notice is the air. It's already thinner, even at this altitude. The second thing is the sheer number of other climbers. Some look like athletes. Some look like dentists on sabbatical. You fall somewhere in between fittish, determined, and just naive enough to think Everest and I got this belong in the same sentence. You meet your guide team at the hotel. They speak in clipped, precise English with eyes that have clearly seen people like you before. People who think physical training and the right boots can prepare them for 29,000 feet of pain. You have all the right gear. The high-altitude boots that cost more than your first car. The base layers made of wool. From sheep with better medical care than you. The gloves lined with space-age technology, and of course, your camera. Because if you climb Everest and don't post it on Instagram, did it even happen? Historical fact. The first confirmed summit of Everest was by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay in 1953, but many believe George Mallory may have reached the top. In 1924, he just never made it down to confirm. You spend the next few days doing the things every climber does before the climb. Last-minute gear checks, endless paperwork, and awkward conversations with people who treat oxygen tanks like baseball cards. In the evenings, the city pulses. Prayer flags flutter in temple courtyards. Tourists haggle over yak wool scarves. Somewhere, a dog barks at a monkey, and you sip masala tea like it's a spiritual ritual. You're not just visiting, you're arriving. You take a selfie with a yak. It smells like wet sweaters and authority. Then you catch your first glimpse of Everest, just a snowy crown poking out between two lesser peaks. It looks unreal, far away, unreachable, which is exactly why you came. Fringe tidbit. The word Everest wasn't always Everest. Locals call it Sagarmatha in Nepali and Chomolungma in Tibetan. Everest was slapped on in honor of a British surveyor who never even saw the mountain. The day you leave for base camp, your backpack weighs as much as a toddler made of bricks. You cram into a tiny plane headed to Lukla, often dubbed the world's most dangerous airport. The runway looks like it was carved into the side of a cereal box. The landing is somehow smooth, but your nerves are still stuck in turbulence. From there, it's a hike, a real one, stone steps, swaying bridges, porters in flip-flops passing you like they're late to lunch. You pretend, but the truth is, Everest starts breaking you long before you reach the mountain. The days blur together, yak traffic jams, bowls of garlic soup, sleeping in lodges with frozen windows and thin walls. You start dreaming in altitude. By the time you reach Namche Bazaar, your legs feel like boiled rope, and your stomach is threatening to mutiny if it sees another energy bar. But it's beautiful, staggeringly beautiful. Prayer flags whip in the wind. The air smells like juniper and cold stone, and behind it all, Everest waits, still distant, still impossible. But you're closer now, and with every footstep, the mountain becomes less of a myth and more of a dare. Historians still debate whether Everest draws out bravery or just amplifies the ego of those foolish enough to chase it. You're hoping it's the former, but the voice in your head, it's already whispering. You have no idea what's coming. Base camp hits you like a freight train made of rocks, altitude, and humble pie. You arrive to a sprawling village of colorful tents sprawled out like some alien marketplace at the edge of the world. The Khumbu Glacier crackles beneath your boots, shifting like it's breathing. It's not just cold here, it's personal. The kind of cold that slips under your skin and tries to rewrite your DNA. You're exhausted, but too wired to rest. Sherpas move around you with the calm efficiency of people who've done this 1,000 times, which they have. They laugh easily, carry loads that make your back hurt just watching, and seem deeply unimpressed by your brand new gear. Your first night is filled with the sound of the glacier groaning tents flapping and one guy in the next tent snoring like a dying yak. You lie awake and realize this is the last place where you'll sleep below 18,000 feet. From now on, every breath will feel like sipping air through a coffee stirrer. Historical fact: the Khumbu Icefall near base camp is one of the most dangerous parts of the Everest route. Made of constantly shifting seracs and crevasses, it's claimed more climbers than any other section of the mountain. You're told to rest and acclimatize. Resting in this case means dragging your aching body on slow hikes up surrounding ridges to stimulate red blood cells, which sounds way more exciting in the brochure. You try to journal. You write, "I am not a mountain goat." You laugh, then cough. Then realize it's not funny anymore. You meet other climbers. There's Dave from Colorado, who once ran ultramarathons. A Japanese woman who summited 6 of the 7 summits. And you, the person who thought hiking apps and cardio playlists were enough prep for a death zone. Still, everyone's friendly until you mention you're planning a no supplemental oxygen attempt. Then the mood shifts. "You sure?" Dave asks gently. You nod like it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Fringe tidbit: some elite Sherpas say they can sense incoming avalanches. Science doesn't confirm it, but after spending centuries on these slopes, maybe their instincts are better than our weather apps. You spend a lot of time watching avalanches from a distance. They look beautiful, like powdered sugar pouring off a countertop. But the sound, low rumbling, unholy, reminds you that beauty can absolutely kill you. On one of your rest days, a helicopter evacuates someone. You watch as it lifts off in a cloud of snow and human desperation. You don't know the climber's name, but you wonder if they cried, if they were relieved, if they felt like a failure. That night, you dream your fingers fall off like icicles. You wake up clutching your gloves like they're the only thing keeping you human. Historians still debate whether Everest became a bucket list adventure or if we turned it into a business transaction with frostbite. Out here, it feels like both. You do your first rotation climbing to Camp 1 and back to let your lungs suffer a bit for the sake of long-term adaptation. It's slow going. The glacier beneath you pops and hisses like it's offended by your presence. You clip into ropes that look older than your climbing permit. The altitude headache hits you around 20,000 feet. It feels like your brain is trying to tunnel out through your eyeballs. You consider crying, but that takes energy, and tears would freeze anyway. You reach Camp 1, throw up, take a selfie, and head back down. Welcome to Everest, where the reward for pain is slightly less pain. At base camp again, you realize you miss your phone, your bed, your stupid microwave. But also, weirdly, you feel something shifting. Something inside you is waking up something raw and quiet and hard-edged. It's like the mountain is peeling layers off you, and you're not sure if it'll stop. The first real climb begins not with a sunrise, but with the sound of someone gagging in the darkness. Welcome to Camp 1. Altitude doesn't care about your itinerary. You unzip your tent, blink into the blue-gray light, and realize your boots are frozen solid. You slap your feet into semi-life force down some lukewarm instant oatmeal and start up the route toward Camp 2. Every step feels like walking with wet cement in your lungs. Your breath comes in rasps. Your head pounds like it's storing a rave in your skull. But you keep moving, because now the real climb begins. Historical fact, Camp 2 on Everest sits at roughly 21,000 feet nestled in the western Coombe, a valley that traps both sunlight and heat during the day, making it deceptively warm. At night, though, it drops below freezing and stays there. The western Coombe sounds exotic, but it's basically a snow basin shaped like a frying pan of despair. The sun reflects off the white ice and cooks you alive. You're sweating under 6-layer sunglasses, fogged face peeling despite SPF 100. You look like a haunted popsicle by the time you stagger into Camp 2. Your tent is barely upright. You crawl in like a dying raccoon and lie still for 30 minutes trying to remember how language works. You meet your tent mate, a guy from Norway named Lars. He says nothing for 20 minutes, then offers you a jelly bean. You take it like it's communion, and just like that, you're bonded. Fringe, tidbit. Yaks can climb up to 20,000 feet, but beyond that, their red blood cells start to fail. Humans too. But we're dumber and more stubborn, so we keep going. Camp 2 becomes your weird new reality. You wait for a weather window, chewing on freeze-dried stew and sharing conspiracy theories with Lars about how your guide definitely hates you. You watch clouds race over Lotzi's face and try not to think about the summit. It's too far, too fictional. Right now, your world is reduced to blisters, dehydration, and trying not to poop outside in 40-mile-per-hour winds. Then comes the day. The push to Camp 3. It starts innocent enough harness on, boots, laced body aching like it's 300 years old. The climb steepens. Fixed ropes stretch skyward like veins into heaven. You clip in, climb, unclip, breathe, repeat. Somewhere near the yellow band, you start questioning life decisions. You could have been at home, with soup and Netflix. Historians still debate whether Mallory's last note, because it's there, was poetic fatalistic or just sarcastic. But up here, it starts to make sense. You reach Camp 3, pitch your tent on a platform carved from snow, and collapse inside. The tent flaps violently in the wind. You imagine it lifting like a kite, dragging you to China. Sleep is impossible. The altitude turns your dreams into feverish time loops. You keep seeing your childhood bedroom morph into glaciers. Your mom offering you hot chocolate while Sherpas whisper warnings in the background. You wake up and realize you've bled from your nose during the night. You wipe it on a sock. You're too tired to care. The next day is supposed to be rest. But no one rests in Camp 3. They wait. They doubt. They stare at the mountain and wonder if it's still worth it. You zip up your jacket tighter. It has to be, because going back now would mean admitting Everest was never the enemy. It was you. Camp 4 is called the death zone for a reason, and you learn that the moment your boot sinks into it. At 26,000 feet, the air is so thin, you feel like a balloon with a slow leak. Your hands are swollen. Your vision edges with stars, even when your eyes are shut. The wind tears through layers like they're made of tissue paper. You pitch your tent on a razor-thin ledge of ice. Every movement feels like math. If you slip, you don't fall, you disappear. Inside the tent, It's like being zipped into a freezer bag with a panic attack. Lars and you don't speak much anymore. You're saving oxygen, not just from tanks, but from yourselves. Every word costs energy. Every glance carries weight. Historical fact. The death zone begins around 8,000 meters, 247 feet. Above this altitude, human life cannot be sustained for long, as the body deteriorates even while resting. Most climbers use supplemental oxygen. Those who don't often suffer hallucinations or die from HAPE or HACE. Your oxygen mask fogs with each exhale. You test the flow. Again. You tell yourself it's working even if your heartbeat feels like a drum line in your ears. You lie down to rest, which really means counting the seconds until the summit push. 1 a.m. Your guide taps your shoulder. No words, just the gesture. Go time. You pull on frozen boots, like shackles' shoulders aching under the weight of layers and fear. The stars above are cold sharp, not twinkling, staring. You step outside into the wind. Fringe tidbit. The summit of Everest is only about the size of a dining table. Climbers often have to wait in line, literally queuing in the death zone for a chance to stand on top of the world. The climb is pure will. You follow the rope line like a lifeline through black voids and snow walls. Every 20 steps, you collapse to your knees, gasping. The headlamp ahead is your lighthouse. You trust it, blindly. Hours blur. You pass the bodies. Yes, the ones they tell you about. You try not to look, but your eyes betray you. A yellow jacket, stiff with ice. A curled hand reaching toward nothing. You say a prayer, even though you haven't in years. You whisper, keep going. Because if you stop, the mountain keeps you forever. You reach the Hillary Step, or what's left of it. A rock scramble near the summit that collapsed in 2015's earthquake. Now, it's just a mess of ropes and footprints and aching knees. You don't care. You climb it like your soul depends on it. Maybe it does. And then just as the first hints of gold kiss the horizon, you're there. The summit. It doesn't roar. It doesn't celebrate. It just is. Quiet, unforgiving, magnificent. Historians still debate whether the true summit experience is spiritual enlightenment or pure survival instinct. You think it might be both. You take a photo. Not for Instagram, for proof. For your mom. For that one gym teacher who said you didn't have follow-through. Your tears freeze midair. Lars stumbles up next to you. He doesn't smile. He just nods. That's enough. 15 minutes. That's all you get. Any longer and you die. So you turn and begin the descent. Because on Everest, getting up is optional. Getting down is mandatory. The descent is worse than the climb. You thought the summit would break you, but it's the way down that truly does. Your legs have turned to boiled spaghetti, and your brain feels like it's been slowly microwaved on low power. The mountain no longer looms. It breathes beneath your feet, ready to swallow. Lars slips early. Not dramatically. Just a slight stagger, a moment too slow to self-arrest. You watch in frozen silence as he skids 10 feet down the ice, thuds to a stop, then waves weakly. You want to yell, but your lungs can't afford the luxury. Historical fact. Most fatalities on Everest occur during descent, often from exhaustion, depleted oxygen supplies, or sudden changes in weather. The majority happen after a successful summit. You pass the bodies again. Only now. Your brain can't process grief, only logistics. You mentally mark their locations like trail signs. The blue boot, The red helmet, the outstretched arm. You focus on the fixed ropes. You count your clips. You try not to think about the growing ache in your left foot that whispers frostbite. By the time you return to Camp 4, it's late afternoon. You collapse inside the tent like a felled tree. Lars crawls in behind you, saying nothing. You both lie still for hours, trading shallow breaths in shared silence. Your guide pokes in later with a look that says, "Tomorrow we move or you die here." You nod without blinking. You're not dying here. Not today. Fringe tidbit. In 2006, climber Lincoln Hall was declared dead near the summit and left behind. 12 hours later, another team found him alive, sitting cross-legged, hallucinating that he was on a boat. You descend to Camp 2 in one long, unbroken push. The sun blazes, but your core is cold. Your vision tunnels. Your hands tremble uncontrollably, and that frostbite whisper becomes a shout. At Camp 2, medics look at your toes and frown. One mutters something about necrotic potential, which is just a fancy way of saying these might fall off. You laugh, and it sounds like glass breaking. They give you antibiotics. You down them like candy. You sleep for 14 hours, waking only to sip boiled water and hate the world. When you finally reach base camp again, it's not a celebration. It's a sigh, like the mountain has decided to spit you out slightly chewed. You see a mirror for the first time. You don't recognize the person staring back. Sunburnt, hollow-cheeked, eyes like craters. You look like someone who's seen things not meant to be remembered. And maybe that's true. Historians still debate whether the Everest experience strips away ego or inflates it beyond repair. You suspect it's both depending on whether you make it down. You write a message home, not a tweet, not a post. A real message. It says still alive, not whole, but alive. And for now, that's enough, because you've met Everest and you walked away. Coming down from Everest isn't like coming home from vacation. There are no lees, no poolside cocktails. There's just a jolting emptiness that trails behind you like an invisible pack mule. You think you'll feel victorious, triumphant, but mostly you just feel cold. You fly from Lukla on a tiny plane that feels held together with duct tape and crossed fingers. The turbulence is laughable. You grin when others gasp. After Everest, everything else is just static. Back in Kathmandu, the air feels thick with life, too thick. You choke on the scent of food traffic fumes and incense. A kid on a scooter nearly hits you and shouts something. You don't flinch. You haven't flinched since 28,000 feet. You check into a guest house and sleep for an entire day. When you wake, you instinctively reach for your oxygen mask, but it's not there. Just a ceiling fan clicking gently. The silence is almost more suffocating than the wind at Camp 4. Historical fact: after Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay first summited Everest in 1953, Hillary famously avoided media hype, returning quietly to his humanitarian efforts in Nepal. The spotlight, he said, felt stranger than the summit. You go out for food. The street market buzzes with tuk-tuks, neon signs, and chatter. A vendor hands you a plate of momo dumplings. You take a bite, and your eyes sting, not from the spice, but because it's the first time you've tasted anything real in weeks. You see other trekkers laughing, pointing at gear stores. They're planning, dreaming. You want to tell them what it's like to freeze from the inside out, to bleed from your eyes, to whisper your own name so you don't forget it, but you don't. You just nod and walk on. Fringe tidbit. Some climbers report the third man factor. the strong sensation of another unseen presence guiding them during extreme isolation. Psychologists debate whether it's spiritual or neurological. Back in your room, you unwrap your feet. The frostbite is worse than you thought. Blackened toes, numb patches. A toe wiggles, but another doesn't. You sigh and cover them again. That's for tomorrow. You stare out the window. Kathmandu glows with chaos and color. So alive, so loud. You realize how far the silence of Everest has followed you. Not the absence of sound, the absence of self, of gravity, of normal, and it doesn't let go. A woman walks by laughing. For a moment, you resent her. Her warm skin, her working lungs, her untouched nails. But then you remember she didn't choose the climb. You did, and no one asked you to. Historians still debate whether post-expedition depression is rooted in brain chemistry, ego deflation, or the loss of purpose. Either way, you feel it setting in like a slow avalanche. You lie on your bed and stare at the ceiling. You made it to the top of the world. And yet, here you are wondering what comes next, because Everest doesn't end at the summit. It echoes. Back home, everything is smaller. The streets, the houses, even the sky. People talk fast, too fast, about things that seem to matter only if you've never watched snow bury your knees while your breath ices inside your mask. You're greeted at the airport with a mix of tears, balloons, and awkward laughter. Someone says, "You look great," and you want to say, "You should have seen me at Camp 4, but you smile instead. Because how do you explain what it felt like to be 30 seconds from not existing? Your dog doesn't recognize you at first. Then he does, and it's the first real joy you've felt since before the mountain. He licks your frostbitten fingers and wags so hard he trips. You cry. You don't even try to stop it. Historical fact. After many expeditions, returning climbers experience reintegration, shock, difficulty, readjusting to life off the mountain. Some isolate, some obsessively plan their next climb, and some never speak of it again. You open your suitcase, and the smell of Everest hits you. Camp smoke, iodine tablets, and fear soaked into your base layers. You throw them in the laundry and close the lid. Your toes aren't healing well. The doctor clicks his tongue and says, "We may need to remove one." He says it gently, as if the toe will hear and take offense. You shrug. You've already buried more of yourself up there than a digit. At night, you can't sleep. You keep dreaming of the sound the wind makes at 8,000 meters, how it doesn't howl but whispers stay. Fringe tidbit. Some Everest survivors claim the mountain calls to them even after they've returned a phenomenon compared to addiction or religious obsession. You get messages from strangers on social media. "Wow, so inspiring. You're crazy, but in a good way. Everest is on my bucket list too." You leave most of them unread. Then one message stops you. It says, "My brother died up there in '96. I hope it was worth it." You stare at it for a long time. And you wonder, was it? You don't respond. Not because you don't have an answer, but because you have too many. You try going back to work, but your desk feels like a cage. Meetings feel like jokes, with the punchlines cut out. You wear your summit photo on a lanyard. People ask about it. You lie and say it was amazing. Say it. What are you supposed to say? That it made you hate the color white. That it stole your toenail and half your soul. That the silence was beautiful and the pain was holy. Historians still debate whether extreme survival experiences elevate or fragment the self. You think both might be true depending on how much you lost. One afternoon, you catch yourself Googling Everest Base Camp again. You close the tab. Not yet. Maybe never. But the mountain's still there, waiting. You start keeping a journal. Not to document the climb, you already did that in your summit log. No, this one is for the aftermath, for the echo, for the bits of your mind that still haven't come down from the ice. You write today, my toe turned purple again. But at least it's still mine. Another day. Tried to explain the altitude headache to my mom. She thought I had a migraine. I didn't correct her. Some entries are just sounds crunch, crackle, wind. No one tells you how loud silence can be until you've slept at Camp 4. Historical fact: the Kumbu cough is a common condition among climbers exposed to thin, cold air at high altitudes. It can persist for weeks after returning, sometimes causing cracked ribs or bleeding. You see a therapist reluctantly. She wears cozy sweaters and speaks gently. You don't tell her everything. You can't. How do you tell someone that part of you misses the near death? That the chaos of the real world feels more artificial than the void above the clouds? She nods when you mention dreams. Night sweats, the echoing wind. She calls it trauma. You call it Everest still talking. At least she listens. You go for long walks, alone, usually around dusk. There's something about the edge of day that makes your mind loosen just enough to breathe. You wear your frostbitten boots, even though you have better ones. It feels right. Once a neighbor jogs past and says, training for something. You say recovery. They laugh. You don't. Fringe. Tidbit. In 2010, a study revealed that survivors of life-threatening climbs often develop summit syndrome, an obsessive tendency to pursue higher goals regardless of risk. A local paper runs a short piece on you. Hometown hero summits Everest. There's a picture of you holding a tattered flag. You're smiling, but you know that expression. It's not joy, it's relief and maybe fear. You don't read the article. Your mom frames it anyway. You start noticing strange things. The way you now hate bright colors. The way your fingers trace ropes unconsciously. The way you look at weather reports like prophecy. And the cold. You crave the cold. Not in a masochistic way. More like home. Historians still debate whether high-altitude adventuring is an evolutionary itch or a cultural obsession. You're not sure what drove you up there, but something sure as hell followed you back down. You get a letter from Lars, handwritten. Says he's already planning another summit attempt K2 this time. Asks if you're in. You sit with the letter for hours. It's tempting, too tempting. You fold it and place it inside your summit journal. Not a yes, not a no, just a not yet. You open your window and let the wind in. You close your eyes and listen. It doesn't whisper this time. It just waits. You finally go through your gear bag. Everything still smells like the mountain-burned fuel nylon and something colder than scent. A kind of absence. You sort your gloves, balaclava goggles, and that cursed headlamp that flickered out on the descent. You find the summit rock. Just a pebble, really. You pocketed it because it felt like proof. Proof you'd been there, that you'd touched the top of the world. You hold it now and realize it means more than any photo could. It's the weight of survival in your palm. You clean your boots, but the scuff marks stay. You decide not to polish them. They're not supposed to look new. They've seen death. Historical fact. George Mallory's body was found in 1999, 75 years after he vanished on Everest's northeast ridge. His remains were so well preserved, his name tag was still legible. You're invited to speak at a local high school. You say yes without thinking, then panic the entire week leading up to it. What do you tell kids about nearly dying in pursuit of a flag photo? You stand in front of a gymnasium full of bored teenagers. The microphone hums. You talk about preparation, teamwork, mental strength. You skip the hallucinations. The moment you thought about unstrapping your harness and just sleeping a bit, you don't tell them that part. You do mention the stars, how they looked so close you thought you could fall into them. After a girl with braces asks, "Were you scared?" You say yes. She smiles like you just gave her permission to be human. Fringe tidbit. In ancient Tibetan lore, Everest, called Chomolungma, is considered a sacred goddess. Some Sherpas believe angering her brings blizzards, avalanches, and misfortune. Superstition or not, climbers still give offerings before the ascent. You start painting. You were never artistic before, but now colors spill from your hands. Mostly whites and grays and blinding blues. You paint wind, ice, your tent at dusk, your boots half buried in snow, a face wrapped in frost and fatigue. You post one online and someone comments, "This looks lonely." You reply, "It was." Then you close the app. You run into a former coworker at the grocery store. They say, "Hey, did you ever end up climbing that mountain?" You smile, nod, say yeah. They say cool, and then start telling you about a broken espresso machine. You listen, because you know they wouldn't understand what you left up there and what followed you home. Historians still debate whether we climb to conquer nature or ourselves. You suspect the truth is neither. Maybe we climb because we're afraid of staying still. That night, you dream of the summit. But this time, you're not climbing. You're sitting, alone, and it's warm. No wind, no danger, just silence and peace. You wake up before the avalanche hits. It takes months before you finally look at the summit photo again. You dig it out of the drawer where you stuffed it under old receipts and forgotten birthday cards. There you are, goggles, iced over jacket, crusted with frost, smile, so forced it looks like a grimace. And behind you, Everest stretches out like a god exhaling. You stare at the picture for a long time. Then you whisper to it, "We made it," because now you believe it. You get frostbite follow-ups every other week. Your big toe has gone from purple to a sickly yellow. The doctor talks options. We can save the nail, or we can save the foot. He jokes badly. You joke back, "I didn't need that toe anyway." Truth is, you kind of miss it already. Your appetite still hasn't returned. You eat in small bites, slowly, like food is something you have to relearn. Friends ask you out to restaurants, and you nod, but mostly don't show. Crowds make you nervous now. Too loud, too much stimulation. You miss the mountain's silence, even when it tried to kill you. Historical fact: Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first confirmed climbers to summit Everest in 1953. Hillary later said, reaching the summit was less emotional than surviving the descent. You read more now. Books about mountaineering, yes, but also poetry. You underline words like solitude, surrender, and ascent. You buy a small bonsai tree and name it Kala Pather after the rocky viewpoint near Everest Base Camp. You still sleep in thermal socks, just in case. Once you hear thunder during a storm, and your whole body jolts. For a moment, it's not thunder. It's an avalanche, and you're right back in the death zone. Breath caught in your throat, heart hammering against your ribs. Then you're home again, safe, more or less. Fringe tidbit. Some climbers leave symbolic items on Everest's summit ashes of loved ones, wedding rings, even flags from lost countries. A Tibetan monk once climbed to leave prayer stones for the souls of those who never returned. Eventually, you return to the trail. Not Everest, not yet. Just a hike through the forest near your house. It's humid green, loud with life. Nothing like the ice cliffs and howling winds, but your lungs feel lighter here. Your heartbeat steadier. You sit on a boulder, close your eyes, and imagine the snow, the stars, the wind whispering stay. And then, for the first time, you whisper back, thank you. Not for the pain, not for the loss, but for what the mountain gave you. A smaller world, a quieter mind, a story you didn't die inside. Historians still debate whether we remember near death to learn or to feel alive again. You're not sure either is wrong. You head home from the hike. Your dog greets you, tail spinning like a rotor blade. You scratch behind his ears, and he noses your boots, the same ones that climbed Everest. You leave them by the door, not as a monument, but as a memory. Because you're not done yet, but you're not chasing the summit either. Not today, not tomorrow. For now, it's enough to just be alive, to feel the air in your lungs, to hear the wind without needing to conquer it. Now, the world feels softer. Edges once jagged are now worn smooth by time and memory. The climb, the pain, the silence, they no longer shout inside your skull. They whisper like old friends who've said all they needed and now simply sit beside you. You don't talk about Everest as much anymore, not because you've forgotten, but because the story lives better in your bones than on your lips. People still ask. Some still say you're brave. Others call you reckless. Both might be right, but you just smile, sip your tea, and let them talk. Because they weren't there. They didn't feel the cold dig into their soul. They didn't see the sky tilt when the air got too thin to carry thought. You did, and you came back. You survived something. Not everyone does, not just the climb, but the return, the re-entry, the strange peace that follows chaos. It will never leave you. The mountain never does. You carry it like a shadow that stretches behind your every step. But that's okay, because now you know how to walk with it, not ahead of it, not away from it, with it. And maybe that's the real summit, the one no photo can capture, the one you plant quietly in your own heart and leave there to bloom.